You know, it's true, I really have been around for a long time. In fact, 2 years ago, I went back to my 50th reunion at Princeton. It was quite an experience. I hadn't been back for a while. In fact, 3 of our children have graduated from college, and none of them went to Princeton. I thought we had a chance with our youngest son, but didn't work out. I told him he ought to go to Princeton and become a Tiger, but he said he'd rather go to Washington State and find a cougar. But while I was back there, I got to MC a joint comedy show with members of the graduating class. It was really quite an experience. The kids were great, but they gave us a time slot at 10:30 in the morning on a Friday. It's the first time any of us had ever been on the stage before noon, and it was the first time half the audience was sober. But I got to take my wife back with me too, and before the show she told me, listen, you got to stay away from politics, religion, and sex. And I told her I can handle 2 out of 3. She said, no, it's got to be 3 out of 3, and what you talk about, you do without. But while I was back there, we got to tour the campus, and you know, a lot of the old buildings looked exactly like they did when I'd been there 50 years ago, but a lot of things had changed, and one of the biggest things that changed was the technology. Because when I was in college, the computer filled the whole room. The idea of a desktop was totally unheard of. And in our day, a hard drive was a long road trip with no beer. But there were some other changes too. When I was at Princeton, it was all male. They weren't co-ed yet. And we had to go off campus to get our dates. But in our arrogance, there were a lot of small colleges that provided dates for us, but in our arrogance, we thought we were a lot smarter than those girls. And I was home at Thanksgiving in my freshman year. I was telling my mother about these colleges. I told her I dated one of those girls, and she spoke in monosyllables all night. My mother said, you mean she said no? I didn't have the heart to tell her she said yes. But you know, when I got my degree in aerospace engineering, so I was always interested in the space program. And recently I was doing some research online, and I discovered that May 26th has been designated as Sally Ride Day in honor of the first female American astronaut. I showed that to my friend Carl, because his wife's name is Sally. And he got in real trouble when he told his wife about that. It turns out Carl's dyslexic, and he thought it was Ride Sally Day. My wife didn't like that one. Actually, after college, I went to work in St. Louis, Missouri. I was actually developed a little bit of a country twang, and I learned to like country music when I was there. I was talking to one of my friends about that. He said, you know, you're the only college graduate I know that likes country music. And I said, yeah, I'm the only college graduate you know. But you know, now I've been practicing attorney for 40 years, and I specialize in aviation transactions and lawsuits. You know, if the machine has wings, I can do the transaction. And if it has one wing, I can do the lawsuit. But one of the things I love about my job, I get to keep track of all the aircraft accidents worldwide. Like, do you all remember the Malaysia Airlines plane that just disappeared without a trace? Yeah. Well, like everybody else, I was fascinated when that airplane just vanished. And after 2 months, all the experts were saying that we'd never find any part of that airplane. And then about a year later, a piece of the left wing washed ashore on Réunion Island down in the Indian Ocean east of Madagascar. And I really wasn't surprised when that happened, because Réunion Island is a part of France, and the left wing is always showing up in France. But you know, I've had some, sometimes it takes a while. But I've had some rather interesting experiences as an attorney. One of my most fun cases was a case that lasted 8 years in France. The claimant was Air Mauritius, and all the work was done outside the courtroom, the judicial expertise proceedings. And we reached an agreement that whatever was said in French would be translated into English and vice versa. We were on the island of Mauritius, which is a little island country, literally on the other side of the globe from here. And Air Mauritius was supposed to produce 3 of their flight crews for interviews. They only produced 1 of them. And I went ballistic. And I said in English, I've traveled about as far as it's possible to travel without leaving this planet. I want to meet the other 2 flight crews. And it was translated into French that if they didn't produce the other 2 flight crews, I was going to go into orbit. You know, people ask me how I got into this kind of work. Actually, I was a pilot before I was an attorney. That was my first real passion. When I was a young man, my mother asked me if I'd marry an ugly girl if she owned an airplane. And I said, what kind of airplane? I have to be careful telling that around my wife. But full disclosure, that was long before I knew my wife. And no, she doesn't own an airplane. And she's very attractive. And we've been married for 39 years. You know, in our day, long, stable marriages are the norm, not like today. One of my college classmates just published his first book on how to have a happy and successful marriage. And the book is selling quite well. But the trouble is half the proceeds are going to his ex-wife. But I remembered I was in California when I went to buy dry cleaners. They've got a poster with a picture of a beautiful bride in a white dress. It says, have your wedding dress cleaned and pressed and stored here so you'll have it ready for next time. I told my wife she doesn't have to worry about me because unless I live to 150, I'm too old for a midlife crisis. But you know, being older, it does have some advantages. Like I get a lot of senior discounts. And quite often they don't even have to ask me. They just look at my gray hair and they say, senior, and I say, yeah. But our hardware store has a lot of discounts. They got senior discounts, they got military discounts, they got contractor discounts. And I was in there and the young kid says, are you entitled to any discounts? And I point at my head, he says, hey, there's no discount for being crazy. But even though I'm older, I'm still in very good health. Last time I had surgery was elective surgery 19 years ago. My wife insisted that I do a vasectomy, and it was actually elective surgery. She said, get cut on or get cut off. But in case she watches this tape, I think I better stop here. I'm Jon Morse.